economy is concerned. The biggest reform perhaps, but was the government ill-prepared? Many questions, and who better than the Honourable Minister of Power, Coal, but the man who has a finger in every pie in policy-making, Piyush Goyal, who joins us right here on ET Now. Thank you very much for being with us. Congratulations on a very well-intended move. We have a lot of ground to cover as far as the implementation is concerned. But I must first begin by talking to you about what happened in the house that you represent, which is the Rajya Sabha. You had the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh rise and say this is organized loot and legalized plunder. Does that hurt?
Not at all.
Because he is a noted economist.
Well, we have been in opposition so many years. So, as an opposition leader, I think he was doing his job. He's a noted economist, but we've seen the kind of economy he left behind for us. We respect him as an individual, but I don't think he ever got an opportunity to save this country from the kind of distress that we inherited. In fact, presiding over an economy where corruption was the norm, where inefficiency and inability to take decisions was evident in almost every step of the way, I think it may not be easy for him to accept that here we have a Prime Minister who's willing to take very, very decisive steps in the fight against corruption, in the fight against black money, particularly in the fight against terrorism and drug financing. And today, with the entire country rallying behind the Prime Minister, different ground surveys, different feedback that we have been receiving, very clearly suggests that despite this inconvenience, and a nation of 125 crore people, and a huge country of this size with 200,000 ATMs, 100,000 bank branches, 155,000 post offices, where money has to be moved in volumes never before seen in the history in the world. It's very obvious, and the people are smarter, it seems, than my colleagues, esteemed colleagues in the House. The people understand that this colossal task needs some time, needs support of the people, and they say that for the larger objective of fighting terrorism, day after tomorrow is 26/11. It's the day where we commemorate, we remember all those people who sacrificed their lives.
I understand that and I appreciate it, and I will not let you blame the previous government. They have been punished for this, and which is why they're sitting in the opposition. Because you're no longer the opposition, you are the treasury benches. He also said monumental mismanagement has been undertaken, despite the fact that it's a nobly, it's a well-intentioned move. Do you believe you could have been better prepared? We are told this was in the works for 6 odd months. Has then it been poorly implemented, or was that poor preparation?
Well, any additional preparation would have been at the cost of compromising secrecy. And I think it was of paramount importance that this be kept secret at the highest level. I don't think more than 3 or 4 people were even in the loop, or 5 people. RBI was leading from the front. The RBI board took the final decision on timing and what needs to be done. And to my mind, it was very, very critical for the success of this entire action that it be kept within the close confines of a small group. To the extent one can prepare for such a massive action, I think good preparation was done. And we are now taking care to ameliorate the difficulties that the people are facing. All of us in government are working as a team, are supporting this colossal action. And we are very confident that with the blessings of our people of India and with the noble objective with which Prime Minister Modi has embarked on this mission, certainly they will be successful in our task.
There are 2 ways to look at the whole exercise and how it's being implemented. If you're in the treasury benches, you will say there's a war room approach. We are reacting to everything that we are finding out. We're giving real-time solutions. The other way to look at it is there's a degree of callousness in New Delhi to the hardships that's being imposed to the common man who's standing in queues for 3, 4, 5 hours to get his own money back, to deposit the petty cash that he's been sitting on. How would you justify the other argument?
Supriya, certainly there were some difficulties, we don't deny that. We were not at all callous, we were very, very conscientious to our job and monitoring the situation across the country, round the clock. There were long queues to begin with, there was uncertainty, and in that uncertainty there was a natural tendency to rush to the bank.
That's right, yes.
I myself didn't rush, I first wanted to go on the first day. But I personally didn't go because I realized I can manage with my debit cards, credit cards, and that same amount which I would have withdrawn would serve somebody else better. Now in this situation also there were people who tried to game the system. You are all aware, we are all aware how people would come into the line repeatedly again and again. Now clearly we didn't want to put an indelible ink mark.
That's right.
We never started with that.
But you perhaps
but
no choice.
We were forced, our hand was forced on that. Now one can say that's a reaction, but I think that's a smart reaction to stop a misuse. And once we put in that action in place, the queues disappeared. Now in any part of the country, the queues are not more than 20, 30 people at a point of time, if at all any. Over 100,000 ATMs have been calibrated in the short span of a week or 10 days. And in every aspect of this, moving money to the rural areas, giving additional limits to the farmers so that they don't miss out on the crop sowing. They get their seeds, they get their fertilizers.
Right.
Ensuring very soon now, I think the 500 rupee notes will be out in market in a good measure. So in every respect, this government, and by the way, many of these things were to a plan. It's not as if everything has been decided now.
Right.
There were many things that were decided that at this stage we will do this, at this stage we will do this, and you will continue to hear many more.
While the opposition chooses to call it monumental mismanagement, I think some of us will congratulate you to at least say that it's a monument task that you've overtaken. The jury is still out of where you will achieve and where we will end up. But other than pulling out 86% of the currency in circulation, were there no other means to crack down on black money? Is that what the government seems to suggest? Because that's not true.
Hasn't this government demonstrated by action what has never been done before? The Supreme Court...
But was it necessitated? That's what I'm asking.
Very clearly. In 2011, the Supreme Court said form an SIT. It was not done by the same gentleman, the erudite economist, as the leader of this country. Could not set up an SIT in 3 years, like Prime Minister Modi did in his first cabinet.
You haven't appointed a Lokpal.
Well, there are certain complications in that which are beyond the realm of our control to be able to do it. There's that issue about the leader of opposition in the first place. So there are issues which are beyond our...
But let's talk about any other solution other than...
So many things. We cracked down on black money. We gave an opportunity for people to come clean. We opened negotiations, and I've already renegotiated with Mauritius and Cyprus. We are working with Singapore to plug the round tripping of money that was happening with the misuse of DTA. We've expanded the engagement with countries for real-time data exchange, and about a 1.25 lakh crore of black money has been unearthed over the last 2 years. Now this particular step was important because large amounts of money were reported to never come back into the economy. RBI has a mechanism by which serial numbers of notes which come into treasury chests around the country or move through the chest is reported and monitored. There were a number of series of notes
that were missing,
which were missing in that. So obviously that was hoarded, or that was just not there in circulation. Similarly, the fake currency. Some people try to allege in the parliament that, the fake currency reported by in previous answers to parliament was 0.2 or 0.02 some percent. Those people, I think, speak without knowledge, a little bit of less understanding than at their level one would expect. Obviously, we can only report in a parliamentary answer where we have caught that fake currency. Or we know for a fact that there must be much more about which we are not even aware. How do we kill that fake currency? The Prime Minister said he'll come out with more details, but we are all aware that the terrorists and all the Naxals and Maoists are suddenly out of business because they don't have enough currency.
Because this issue has happened when Parliament is in session, there are obvious emotions that are flying high. And one would want to ask you, the jury will still be out on what we will achieve, but the wage labourers, the daily wage labourers, the farmers, the poor people, who is really going to take the blame for the lives that have been lost? And don't give me an answer about autopsies have to be done, like somebody said in Parliament today, to decide whether people died of cash starvation or not. But this is an emotive issue. This is an emotional issue that was raised.
Clearly, our heart goes out to any family who had an unfortunate incident in their family. We are very, very concerned, and I can, on my behalf, on behalf of the government, I can only express my condolences. And clearly, we will be in dialogue with the states to assess what happened, what was the cause, how it happened, how it could have been done better. We'll be talking to the particular banks or branches where some of these news came from. I've not heard of any starvation deaths. If you have any information, please do pass it on to me. We'll look at that also very seriously. But having said that, may I venture to suggest to you that we really thought that when we are fighting against such a massive menace of black money, corruption, terror financing, drug cartels using fake currency, we thought the whole nation will rally behind us. Today I got a message from a colonel who's a paratrooper, the guys who are actually right there in the battlefield. He sent me a message, sir, please stand firm on this decision. Don't roll it back. I've gone around the whole of Haryana for the last 10 days. I went to rural areas, urban areas. Certainly there are some difficulties, some hardships, but everywhere I went, people said we are happy that Prime Minister Modi has taken such a decisive action.
For some of us who've been paying taxes, I think we give you a big thumbs up.
Supriya, after all, I'll take an analogy of power theft. When 5 people steal power, the rest of the 95 have to pay higher bills to pay for it. If all of us start paying our taxes honestly, we can actually look at lower tax rates, GST rates. Look at...
I will come upon that.
No, wait a minute. Look at the situation on interest rates. Yesterday,
I have questions on that, so I will not let you answer that in passing because I have specific questions there. But you also understand the economic landscape. And just to quote Manmohan Singh again in Parliament today, he said, underestimates do suggest that the GDP could be down by 2%. India's GDP growth has been largely consumption driven. As somebody who understands the economic landscape, are you not concerned about consumption taking a hit and the GDP being cut by 2% perhaps?
Well, I wish former Prime Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh would educate us a little more by how he came to that calculation. Another esteemed colleague, of course, gave his own economic theory and made a calculation, but I will not join issue on that. I'll leave it for you to assess.
But are you concerned about consumption taking a hit?
First of all, I thought all these years, India was always told that it is not a consumption-based economy. It's the first time I'm hearing on an economic channel that India is a economy.
It's not investment-led growth.
It's the first time I'm hearing that India has been a consumption-led economic growth. In fact, that was the Western model of America and Europe.
But so is it for India. We're not an investment-led growth model. We are a consumption-led growth model.
Clearly, we are encouraging investments in this country. Every time growth took a backseat, it was when investments fell. After all, consumption at a certain level has always been there. It is always the investment which has picked up. Are you concerned about
consumption taking a hit in the short term?
In the short term, obviously, we have acknowledged it so openly that this quarter is bound to face a small hit because of this major action. But for the long-term gain that the Indian economy will have, lower interest rates, better tax compliance, after all, GST can never be successful with the large pervasive influence of cash on the economy and therefore illegal transactions. Many people in Parliament from the opposition benches have tried to suggest that we should accept that India will continue and will always be an economy which will largely be driven by cash and black money. This government is not willing to accept that. I think we owe it to the people of India to try and clean this system.
Right. You've been candid enough to admit that you acknowledge there may be a minor hit on consumption, at least in this quarter. Is there an internal analysis of the impact on growth that it could have?
Well, largely the basic consumption items will not take a hit. Agriculture sowing is being taken care of and I don't see any hit on agriculture. The last crop was the highest, the Kharif crop has been the highest in the history of India, which we've never seen before in terms of output. In terms of industrial output, in terms of power, you saw the first half showing a 6.5% growth in coal-based generation. In almost every sector, we have been seeing an upswing. Now, end of the day, I think as an economic person, you will appreciate that more and more of the underground economy comes into the books of people and everybody gets a chance to compete fair and square in an honest environment. The GDP is going to benefit from the illegal transactions being reported.
So you believe the cost-benefit analysis weighs out in the long term, if not in the short term?
Usually, even in the near term, it's usually an upside. Look at, even if you look at the amount of black money in the system, when that comes into the banking channels, if at all, and if it doesn't come in and it gets extinguished, it gets into the RBI's books. In every respect, you have an opportunity to bring money into investment cycle. Consumption, which is today underreported because of use of black money, will start getting more honestly reported. people will be scared to indulge once again in corruption or in black transactions, illegal transactions like in the past, because they know there is a government which means business. After all, cash, by the way, from 2007 to now has increased from 68% to 86%. Now, almost 16% increase.
But so has the size of the Indian economy.
No. The percentage of
cash being used
in the total basket of large currency notes.
I want to ask you a
500
question.
and 1000 rupee notes till 2007 were about 68% of the total currency.
Yes, absolutely.
That's moved up to
86%.
What does that reflect? And a lot of it is not coming into the system at all.
And high denomination currency is always the black hole for black money. But as somebody who understands money and fisc and all of that, do you believe and do you fear that at one level, the whole debate around this issue is ending up demonized cash? Cash is not a bad thing, or is it? It's very good to move to digital. It's transparent.
Nobody said cash is bad. We respect cash. हम तो लक्ष्मी पूजा करने वाले लोग हैं और हमारे घर में कुबेर रखते हैं, वो छोटा गुल्लक रखते हैं.
Which is why I'm asking
so we are very conscious about that. Having said that, do you realize the money velocity that we can get as more and more transactions come into the formal economy? Money lying in people's homes or money hoarded by these black marketeers is not helping the money velocity or moving the economy. Whereas money in the bank moves several times over and helps the economy. In fact, all the economists or so-called economists who have spoken so far from the opposition benches on television, who have written articles, some of whom have not been very favorably inclined towards this, have not yet answered how a few lakh crores coming into the economy additional can ever be detrimental to the economy. In fact, it can only add to the economic cycle and economic growth.
The reason why I asked you that question is that your government has promised to create jobs. And a lot of people fear that the more we move towards the digital landscape, the more jobs will be rendered.
That's the old argument about computers or mobile.
Because people online are also beginning to talk about this now. Will jobs be rendered useless on account of this?
I think we just had the Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore addressing the first Niti Transformative India lecture. We had Mr. Bill Gates speak last week on his lecture on how transformative ideas can transform the nation. Both alluded to the changing nature of jobs in the world and the changing nature of jobs in India so that we can keep pace in an integrated globalized world. Now more and more children wherever we go are getting connected to digital India. We are focusing on skilling people for new age jobs. And I think the world is moving in a fashion never seen in history before. And India has to keep pace with that. If we want to provide the people of India a better quality of life, if we want to provide people of India better paying jobs. In fact, the labor argument, you alluded to it earlier.
Right.
I thought the trade union leaders would be the happiest when we insist that everybody pays their contract labor, their domestic health.
But the left has actually moved forward on this.
Exactly. But we are wondering why. I thought when the tea garden workers, coffee plantation workers get paid in checks, at least their minimum wages will be guaranteed. Unlike at present, when a thumb impression is taken on a piece of paper, the poor guy
don't even know
what he gets.
Yeah.
I'm told, it's reported, that some of these trade unions want to pick out a note or two out of that salary as it is not being paid minimum wages.
Sure.
Some of it being picked out by the local strongman. I think it's a crime against labor, which we are trying to stop. I am very delighted that the country's largest trade union, the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, has wholeheartedly welcomed this. I just received a message from them. They'd like to support this movement towards paying all workers in this country.
And should bring in some amount of a fair treatment there.
And they'll at least be assured minimum wages. So many establishments who have to give medical treatment, who have to provide provident fund facility, who have to provide a minimum bonus to their workmen. Even contract workers are not doing it. So I think it's the biggest pro-labor movement, pro-labor measure ever attempted in so many.
I hope the labourer who's standing in the queue will buy that argument. But I have two apprehensions.
You have any
no, I don't.
Suspicion about what I said?
No, I don't.
You have any disagreement in what I said?
No, I don't.
So if that poor labourer has not yet understood the argument,
it's short-term pain.
May I request all the media persons, instead of going to people and putting words into their mouth, or asking very
No,
leading
I
questions.
have positive things
not,
coming out
not
of it.
work like a lawyer.
No.
But try and get the real mood
I'm
of
going
the
to get two
nation.
more apprehensions and then move to the positive part, and there is plenty that we need to discuss there. Two apprehensions is that has this move in some sense eroded the faith that one had in the Indian banking system or the Indian currency, so to say?
Well, if there was an erosion of faith, people would not be standing in lines peacefully. Rajvardhan Rathore, the IMB minister, just day before yesterday told me he was in Uttar Pradesh in the Parivartan Yatra, and today a very senior colleague in the House alluded to the fact that maybe Modi ji did this keeping in view the UP
Elections, yeah.
I don't know whether they've already given up that election, if that is what their thinking is. And they've seen the mood of the people on the ground wanting to support this move. And therefore they have become unsettled that, oh my God, the UP election is lost. But Rajvardhan Rathore saw it on the ground. He said while the Parivartan Yatra was going, there were 30-40 people queues in some of the banks. But he says as we passed by, they also joined shouting slogans in support of the Bharatiya Janata Party and praising Prime Minister Modi.